Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to break down a business English podcast episode.
Okay.
Specifically episode 42, How to Answer Career Goal Questions. You know how even CEOs sometimes fumble when talking about their ambitions? There was this one tech exec who early in his career told his manager he wanted to be like Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh.
Let's just say it didn't quite go as planned.
It's true. Discussing career goals is kind of a universal challenge, whether you're just starting out or leading a company.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that it's a skill that often gets overlooked. People assume it should come naturally, but navigating those conversations effectively across different cultures, timelines, situations, that takes real finesse.
Totally. And this episode really digs into those nuances.
Yeah.
Now, episode 42 is pretty extensive with 16 sections.
Okay.
So we're going to focus on the most fascinating and immediately useful parts for you.
Right. One of the key takeaways is the power of language. The episode kicks off with a section called The Language of Ambition, and it highlights how even subtle shifts in wording can make a huge difference in how you're perceived.
Yeah, like choosing I plan to instead of I want to. It sounds like such a small thing, but it really projects a sense of purpose and professionalism.
Exactly. It's about understanding the psychology behind language. I want to can come across as wishful thinking, whereas I plan to suggests you've already thought it through and are taking concrete steps. The episode gives an example of a software engineer who is struggling to articulate her career goals. She initially said she wanted to grow, which is pretty vague, right?
Yeah.
But then she reframed it as developing architectural thinking skills and leading cross-functional technical initiatives.
Yeah, what a transformation. It's still the same underlying goal, but it suddenly sounds so much more impressive. Strategic. It really highlights how you can take control of the narrative around your career goals.
Absolutely. Now, another fascinating point the episode brings up is how the language of ambition can differ across cultures. What might sound confident and assertive in one context could be perceived as arrogant or inappropriate in another.
It reminds me of that anecdote they share about the Silicon Valley product manager who was in a meeting in Singapore. She boldly declared that she was going to disrupt the entire industry within 18 months. And you could practically hear crickets chirping. It's so important to be mindful of those cultural nuances, especially in today's globalized world.
For sure, the episode highlights this concept of cultural bridges, which are ways to phrase your goals that resonate across different cultures. For example, instead of saying, I want to spearhead aggressive expansion, you could say, I'm eager to contribute to our growth initiatives through collaborative leadership. It conveys the same level of ambition, but in a way that's more likely to be well received across cultures.
That's such a great strategy. It makes me wonder if there are similar bridges for different time frames, because the episode also talks about how the way you discuss timelines can really impact how your goals are perceived, right?
Absolutely. That's covered in the time game section. And it emphasizes how important it is to demonstrate your understanding of business rhythms. Instead of just throwing out a random date, you want to show that you're thinking strategically and aligning your goals with the company's milestones. Using phrases like by Q4 or in line with the next product launch can show you are in sync with the company's overall direction.
It makes me think of that story they shared about the junior analyst who boldly claimed she'd be CEO within 2 years. It's a classic example of a timeline blunder.
It happens more often than you'd think, and that's why the episode introduces what they call the triple T approach to timelines. Tactical, tangible, and transparent.
Okay, let's unpack that. What do those T's actually mean in practice?
Well, tactical means using specific timeframes that are aligned with company goals, like a product launch or a fiscal year end. Tangible means setting goals that can be measured and tracked, like hitting a specific sales target or completing a certification. And transparent means being open about your timeline and explaining your reasoning behind it.
So it's not just about saying, I want to be promoted in a year. It's about saying, I plan to achieve X, Y, and Z by specific time frame to prepare myself for a leadership role.
Yeah.
It's about showing you've really thought it through and you're connecting your aspirations to the company's overall success.
Exactly. It's about showing you're not just thinking about your own career ladder, but how your growth fits into the bigger picture.
This is all great in theory, but I'm sure our listeners are wondering how to actually weave these timeline concepts into real-life conversations.
Well, that's where the episode really shines. It goes beyond just giving you the concepts and dives into the practicalities of how to actually have those conversations electively. The next section, the dialogue dance, is all about that. It emphasizes the importance of seeing these career conversations not as monologues, but as a dynamic exchange.
Oh, I like that. Like a dance where you have to be responsive to your partner's moves?
Precisely, you have your core message, your goals and aspirations. But you also need to be adaptable and ready to improvise based on the other person's cues and questions. It's about striking that balance between assertiveness and flexibility.
So it's not about memorizing a script, but rather developing a set of skills and strategies to navigate those conversations authentically.
Exactly, and they give this great example of a project manager named Sarah who was in her performance review. Everything was going smoothly until her manager threw her a curveball question about how her goals aligned with the department's restructuring. It totally threw her off script.
Oh, I hate those curveball questions.
Yeah.
So how did Sarah handle it?
She used what the episode calls the conversational bridge technique. Instead of panicking or going blank, she gracefully acknowledged the question and then smoothly bridged it back to her main points.
Interesting. So what does building a conversational bridge actually look like? What are the key steps?
Well, first you acknowledge the question or concern head on. You don't want to ignore it or try to dodge it. Then you find a point of connection between their question and what you were originally discussing. It might be a shared goal, a common value, or a relevant skill. And finally, you use that connection point to smoothly transition back to your main message.
So in Sarah's case, maybe she connected her individual goals to the overall success of the restructuring, showing her manager how her aspirations actually supported the changes.
Exactly. It's about showing that you're not just thinking about your own agenda, but you're also thinking about the bigger picture and how you can contribute to the company's success.
I bet that technique would be super useful in those salary negotiation conversations too.
Absolutely. It's all about being strategic and adaptable in your communication while still staying true to your core message and goals.
This episode is packed with so much great advice. It feels like we've already learned so much. But we are just getting started with our deep dive. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore even more practical tips and techniques from how to answer career goal questions.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We are dissecting how to answer career goal questions, and we've already uncovered some valuable insights about language, culture, and timing when discussing your aspirations.
Right, we talked about the power of choosing the right words, navigating cultural differences, and framing your goals within a realistic time frame.
Exactly. Now, let's shift our focus to another crucial aspect of career discussions: feedback.
Correct.
The episode dedicates a whole section to the feedback loop, and it emphasizes how to turn feedback sessions into opportunities for growth and advancement.
Because feedback isn't just something you passively receive, right? It's something you can actively engage with to extract valuable insights.
Precisely, it's about seeing feedback as a two-way street. The episode encourages listeners to use what they call the echo and enhance technique. Instead of getting defensive or simply saying thank you, you respond to feedback by asking clarifying questions to gain a deeper understanding.
I like that. So instead of just nodding along when your manager says your presentations need improvement, you dig deeper and ask for specific examples of what they're looking for.
Exactly. They actually give this great example of a marketing specialist named Michael. When his manager mentioned that his presentations needed work, he didn't just accept it at face value. He asked his manager for specific instances where strong presentation skills had a direct impact on strategic goals.
So he essentially turned a potential criticism into a learning opportunity. I bet that impressed his manager.
Absolutely. It shows initiative and a willingness to grow. The episode also talks about how you can use feedback sessions as reconnaissance missions to uncover potential career paths within the company.
Well, that's clever.
Yeah.
So you are not just focusing on what you need to improve right now, but you're also looking ahead and strategically gathering information.
Exactly. The episode calls it the feedback forward method. It's about framing your questions about improvement within the context of future industry trends and company goals.
That's so smart. So instead of just asking how to improve my data analysis skills, I could ask how those skills are going to become even more crucial as the industry evolves, and what opportunities might open up for someone with advanced expertise.
Exactly. It shows you're not just thinking about the task at hand, but also thinking ahead and positioning yourself for future opportunities.
I love these proactive strategies. It seems like a lot of people might shy away from those kinds of conversations because they worry about coming across as too ambitious or even pushy. But this episode really empowers you to take control of your career trajectory.
It does. And speaking of taking control, they also have this technique called feedback framing, where you learn to reframe perceived weaknesses as strengths.
Okay, that sounds interesting. How does that work exactly?
Well, they give the example of the senior analyst who was told she was too detail-oriented. Instead of getting defensive, she reframed it by saying, My attention to detail allows me to spot critical issues that others might miss, which has helped us avoid costly mistakes.
That is brilliant. She turned a potential negative into a positive.
Hmm.
But is it always possible to reframe weaknesses like that?
It's not about pretending you don't have any areas for improvement, but it's about highlighting how your unique traits can contribute to success. Of course, it's important to be genuine and authentic.
Right. It's not about manipulating the situation, but rather about presenting yourself in the best possible light
Yeah.
while still being true to yourself.
Exactly. And the episode offers even more strategies for making the most of feedback sessions. They talk about the question cascade technique, where you have different levels of questions prepared. From tactical to strategic to visionary, this helps you really dig deep and get the most value out of the conversation.
Wow, that's next level preparation. So not just going in with a list of questions, but actually thinking about the different layers of information you want to gather.
Precisely. And all of these techniques feed into this overarching theme of developing a growth mindset. The episode emphasizes how important it is to communicate your commitment to continuous learning and development, even when receiving constructive criticism.
It's about seeing challenges not as setbacks, but as opportunities for growth.
Right, and the language you use really reflects that mindset. They even talk about this concept of growth grammar, where you focus on using phrases that highlight your desire to learn and evolve.
So instead of saying, I don't have experience in X, you would say, I'm excited to develop my expertise in X.
Exactly. It's a subtle shift, but it can make a huge difference in how you are perceived. And the episode gives an example of a software developer who was initially hesitant to apply for a role that involved cloud architecture because she lacked experience. But then she reframed it by saying she was eager to expand her skill set and learn about this rapidly growing field.
And I bet that eagerness and willingness to learn made her a much more attractive candidate.
Absolutely. It shows that you are not afraid of challenges and that you are committed to continuous learning.
This is all so insightful. I'm starting to realize how much intentionality goes into these career conversations.
Right. It's about being strategic and thoughtful in your communication. The episode also introduces this great concept called the future-focused dialogue. It's about painting a picture of your professional future on an expandable canvas.
Okay, I love that visual expandable canvas. What does that mean in a practical sense?
It means acknowledging that your skills and knowledge will continue to evolve. Instead of presenting a rigid plan, you present a flexible framework for growth, showing that you're adaptable and ready to embrace new opportunities as they arise.
It takes the pressure off having to know exactly what you'll be doing 5 years from now, right? It's more about showing that you're committed to growth and development, whatever form that takes.
Exactly, and they also talk about the power of growth stories. These are anecdotes about times you've overcome challenges or learned valuable lessons. These stories make your growth mindset tangible and relatable.
Stories are so powerful. They bring your experiences to life and help people connect with you on a deeper level.
Right, and the episode even gives you a framework for crafting these stories. They call it the learning bridge technique, where you connect current challenges to future opportunities, showing how each experience is a building block in your professional development.
This is all gold, but I'm also realizing that it's not just about how you talk about yourself. It's also about how you tailor your message to different people within your organization. Because what resonates with your manager might not resonate with the CEO, right?
You're absolutely right, and that's where we move into the next fascinating section of the episode, which is all about the stakeholder strategy. It's about understanding that different people have different perspectives and priorities, and you need to adjust your communication accordingly.
That makes so much sense. So how do you do that in practice? How do you tailor your message to different stakeholders?
Well, the episode introduces a concept called altitude adjustment, which is basically about adjusting the level of detail and sophistication of your language depending on who you're talking to.
So you might talk about very specific skills and tasks with your direct supervisor. But when you are talking to the CEO, you'd focus more on the strategic impact and the bigger picture.
Precisely. It's like using different lenses to focus your message depending on your audience.
I like that analogy. It's like you have different versions of your career narrative,
Yeah.
each tailored to a specific stakeholder.
Exactly. And they give this great tool called the stakeholder value matrix, where you can actually map out the different values and interests of each key person you need to communicate with. It helps you figure out which aspects of your goals will resonate most with each individual.
So with your team lead, you might focus on your technical skills and how you can contribute to the team's day-to-day work. But with the CFO, you might emphasize your understanding of financial metrics and your ability to impact the bottom line.
Exactly. It's about understanding what motivates each stakeholder. and framing your goals in a way that aligns with their priorities.
Wow, this episode just keeps getting better and better. It's like a master class in strategic communication for your career.
It really is, and we're just getting started with part 2. Stay tuned for more valuable insights from how to answer career goal questions, as we delve deeper into how to use data storytelling and negotiation to craft a compelling career narrative that resonates with your audience and helps you achieve your goals.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been analyzing Business English Podcast episode 42, How to Answer Career Goal Questions. We talked about language feedback and even tailoring your message to different stakeholders.
We have covered a lot of ground, but there's still some essential elements to explore. This episode goes beyond just qualitative aspects and dives into the power of numbers.
Oh, you mean like using data and metrics to support your career goals?
Exactly. The numbers narrative section emphasizes how you can use data to tell a more compelling and persuasive story about your contributions and aspirations.
Okay, I can see how that would be important, especially in fields like finance or tech, where data is king.
Right.
But how do you actually weave numbers into a career conversation without sounding like a robot?
That's where the metrics magic comes in. It's about turning dry statistics into memorable and impactful talking points. The episode tells a story about James, a marketing manager who used something called the impact equation to transform his approach to discussing his goals.
The impact equation, what's that all about?
Instead of just stating his goals, he started backing them up with quantifiable achievements. So for example, instead of saying, "I want to grow our social media presence," he would say, "I've driven a 200% increase in engagement, and I see the potential to scale this success across all our digital channels."
I know, that makes so much sense. It's not just about what he wants to do. It's about what he has already accomplished.
Right.
The numbers make his ambitions so much more believable and impactful.
Exactly. It shows he is not just dreaming big, he's actually delivering results. And the episode goes even further by introducing data storytelling, where you weave those numbers into a narrative that resonates with your audience.
I'm intrigued by this data storytelling idea. How would that work in practice?
They give the example of a project manager who is presenting to her manager. Instead of overwhelming him with a bunch of statistics, she connected the dots between the data points and painted a picture of future potential. She said something like, "By streamlining our workflow, we've reduced project delivery time by 30%, which means we can take on 3 extra projects each quarter."
That is so much more compelling than just saying we've improved efficiency by 30%. She's showing how those numbers translate into tangible benefits for the company.
Exactly. It's about framing your contributions in a way that highlights their value. And they also talk about the ROI conversation.
ROI, return on investment.
Exactly. It's about framing your accomplishments in terms of their financial impact on the company. They worked with a sales representative who absolutely nailed this technique. He said, "My initiatives have led to a 45% increase in client retention, which is translated to $2.3 million in sustained revenue."
Wow. Talk about making an impression.
Yeah.
He's not just talking about hitting targets. He's talking about generating real financial value for the company.
Right. And finally, they introduced this technique called metric layering, where you build a compelling case by presenting a series of interconnected metrics that demonstrate your impact at different levels.
Okay, break that down for me. How would you actually layer those metrics?
They had a financial analyst who used this approach. By starting with his personal impact, like how he had reduced analysis time by a certain percentage, then he connected that to team success, showing how his increased efficiency had freed up the team to take on more projects. And finally, he linked it all to organizational value, demonstrating how the department as a whole had saved money because of his contributions.
Wow, so he's basically showing how his individual efforts ripple outward and create value across the entire organization. That's a really powerful way to showcase your contributions.
It is, and all of these techniques highlight the power of data in shaping your career narrative. It's not just about telling your story, it's about backing it up with evidence.
This has been incredibly helpful. I feel like I'm already starting to think differently about how I could use numbers to tell my own career story.
That's great to hear. Now shifting gears a bit. The episode also tackles something that I know a lot of people struggle with, explaining career changes or transitions, especially when those transitions might seem unconventional or even unrelated to their previous experience.
Oh yes, I've definitely been there trying to connect the dots and make sense of your career path, especially for a potential employer.
Exactly. And that's where the career compass section comes in. It's all about how to navigate different career paths while maintaining a strong and consistent narrative.
So how do you do that? How do you make sense of those seemingly random jumps on your resume?
Well, they give the example of Lisa, a UX designer who wanted to transition into product management. Instead of framing it as a complete departure from design, she emphasized continuity by saying, I'm leveraging my user-centered design expertise to build a broader product strategy skill set.
Ah, so she is highlighting the transferable skills, showing how her design background actually gives her a unique perspective on product management.
Exactly. She's telling a cohesive story about her career journey, even though it involves a shift in focus. And they also talk about something called the compass conversation.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the compass conversation?
It's about confidently articulating your rationale for pursuing those unconventional career paths. They worked with a data analyst who wanted to move into AI ethics, which seemed totally unrelated to her previous experience.
Yeah, that's a pretty big leap. So how did she explain that transition?
She reframed it as a natural progression, saying, my deep understanding of data patterns has shown me the critical importance of ethical AI implementation. She basically connected the dots for her audience, showing how her previous experience actually laid the groundwork for this new direction.
That's a brilliant strategy. It's about finding those threads that connect your experiences and weaving them into a coherent narrative.
Right, and they also talk about bridge building language, which is similar to the cultural bridges we discussed earlier. It's about finding those commonalities and highlighting the transferable skills and experiences that connect seemingly unrelated roles or industries.
So someone who is moving from marketing to sustainability might talk about how their experience in consumer behavior research is actually relevant to understanding how to drive sustainable choices.
Exactly. It's about showing the connections and highlighting the value you bring, regardless of your specific job title. And they even have this visual metaphor called the transition tapestry.
Ooh, love a good metaphor. Tell me more.
They encourage you to think of your career moves as different threads in a tapestry, each one contributing to the overall beauty and complexity of the final piece. They worked with a finance manager who used this approach to describe his move into operations. He framed it as a natural weaving together of his quantitative analysis skills with his passion for practical implementation.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. It's not about seeing those career changes as detours or mistakes, but as integral parts of your unique professional journey.
Exactly. It's about embracing the richness of your experiences and finding the narrative that connects them all.
This is all so inspiring. I'm realizing that telling your career story is an art form in itself.
And that leads us to the next key section of the episode, the power of story. It emphasizes how important it is to move beyond simply listing your achievements and actually craft a captivating narrative that resonates with your audience.
Because stories are how we connect with each other. They make information memorable and relatable.
Precisely, the episode highlights the importance of going beyond just facts and figures and actually creating an emotional connection. They tell the story of David, a cybersecurity expert who used a technique they call hero's journey in heels to bring his professional journey to life.
Hero's journey in heels. I love that it sounds so much more engaging than a typical bio or a resume. So what did David do?
Instead of reciting his qualifications, he shared a personal anecdote about how he helped a small business recover from a cyber attack. He talked about the emotional roller coaster, the challenges he faced, and the ultimate triumph of restoring their data and their peace of mind. That story sparked his passion for protecting digital assets, and it's what drove him to become the expert he is today.
Wow, what a powerful way to connect with his audience. He's not just listing his skills, he's showing his humanity and his passion.
Yeah.
I bet people remember that story long after they forget the details of his resume.
Exactly. And the episode offers several other storytelling techniques you can use to make your career narrative more compelling. They talk about the narrative necklace, where you string your experiences together like beads on a necklace, each one representing a significant step in your career progression.
I love that visual. So instead, seeing those experiences as isolated events, you are showing how they are all connected and how they have led you to where you are today.
Exactly. They also talk about conflict resolution storytelling, where you don't shy away from challenges, but instead showcase how you overcame those obstacles and learn valuable lessons along the way.
Because challenges are part of every career journey, right? It's about showing your resilience and your problem-solving skills.
Right, and the episode gives an example of an operations manager who was initially hesitant to talk about a project where she missed a deadline, but then she reframed it by highlighting how that experience taught her the importance of communication and proactive planning, and how she used those lessons to improve her team's performance on subsequent projects.
Turning a potential negative into a positive that's so clever. And it shows that she's not afraid to own her mistakes and learn from them.
Exactly. And they even give you frameworks for structuring your stories effectively. They talk about story scaffolding, where you build a narrative with a strong foundation, a clear structure, and a compelling climax. They also have this technique called plot point pivot, where you reframe career shifts as moments of discovery and growth, rather than detours or setbacks.
It's about seeing those transitions as opportunities to learn and evolve.
Exactly. And they even suggest using analogies and metaphors to make complex concepts more relatable. They call this universal connection. They worked with an IT specialist who mastered this technique by comparing system integration to conducting an orchestra, ensuring harmony in the digital infrastructure.
That's a fantastic analogy. It takes a technical concept and makes it understandable and even engaging for a wider audience.
Exactly. And finally, they talk about two more techniques that can really elevate your storytelling. There's the future flashback technique, where you project yourself into the future and look back on your career, framing every challenge as a stepping stone toward your ultimate goals. And then there's the emotional echo, where you connect your professional achievements to moments of impact, highlighting the human element behind your success.
These are all such powerful tools. It's about going beyond just facts and figures and actually touching people's hearts with your story.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that storytelling isn't just for creative fields. It's a valuable skill for anyone who wants to communicate effectively and make a lasting impression, no matter what industry they're in.
This episode is full of so much wisdom. It's like a masterclass in career communication. But before we wrap up, there's one more key area we need to touch on: negotiation.
You're right. The episode dedicates a whole section to the negotiation navigator, which is all about advocating for yourself and asking for what you want in your career.
Because it's not enough to just have goals and articulate them outright. You also need to be able to negotiate for the resources, opportunities, and support you need to achieve those goals.
Exactly. And this section emphasizes approaching those conversations with confidence and clarity, framing your requests in a way that highlights mutual benefits.
So it's not about making demands or being aggressive. It's about finding those win-win scenarios.
Exactly. They introduce a concept called the value conversation, which is about emphasizing the value you bring to the table. Instead of just asking for a raise or a promotion, you back up your request with concrete examples of your achievements and the impact you've made.
They give an example of Emma, a software engineer, who really mastered this approach. She came to the negotiation prepared with a list of her key contributions, highlighting how she had consistently exceeded expectations and saved the company time and money. She then expressed her desire to take on more responsibility and contribute even more in a senior role.
That's a great example of how to showcase your worth. It's about demonstrating that you're not just asking for something, you are offering something valuable in return.
Right. It's about positioning yourself as an asset the company wouldn't want to lose. What other techniques do they recommend?
They talk about the opportunity bridge technique, where you identify potential growth areas within the company and position yourself as the ideal candidate to lead those initiatives.
So, for example, if the company is looking to expand into new markets, you might highlight your experience in international business development and express your eagerness to contribute to that growth.
Exactly. It's about being proactive and showing that you're not just thinking about your own career ladder, but you're also thinking about how you can contribute to the company's success.
And that aligns perfectly with another technique they mention: problem-solution positioning.
Right. It's about presenting yourself as the solution to existing challenges the company is facing.
So if the company is struggling with communication breakdowns between departments, you might highlight your experience in cross-functional collaboration and offer a framework for improving communication flow.
Exactly. It's about showcasing your problem-solving skills and demonstrating your ability to add value by addressing real business needs.
This is also smart.
Yeah.
It's about shifting the conversation from "what can the company do for me?" to "what can I do for the company?"
Exactly. And that leads us to another key technique: future value framing. It's about presenting your career aspirations as investments in the company's future success.
So instead of just asking for training in a new technology, you might highlight how that skill will enable you to contribute to the company's innovation initiatives.
Precisely, it's about aligning your goals with the company's long-term vision, showing that you are invested in their success as much as your own.
I'm starting to see how all of these techniques work together to create a really compelling case. It's not just about asking for what you want, it's about demonstrating your value, aligning your goals with the company's needs, and finding those win-win solutions.
Right, and they also emphasize the importance of being prepared to handle resistance. Not everyone is going to immediately say yes to your requests.
That's true. So how do you deal with those situations where you encounter pushback?
They have this framework called the flexibility framework. It's about being adaptable and finding alternative pathways to achieve your goals when you face obstacles.
So if your request for a promotion is denied, you might suggest a phased approach, where you gradually take on more responsibilities while demonstrating your readiness for the next level.
Exactly. It's about being persistent, but also being flexible and willing to compromise.
And it all comes back to that collaborative spirit they emphasized earlier. It's about seeing the negotiation as a partnership, not a battle.
Right. They call it the collaboration catalyst, where you focus on mutual benefits and frame career growth as a joint venture between you and the company.
It's about finding that sweet spot where your personal aspirations and the company's goals intersect.
Exactly. Now let's move on to another crucial aspect of career discussions, especially in today's rapidly changing world, navigating crises and disruptions.
Because let's face it, things don't always go according to plan. Companies restructure, industries shift, unexpected challenges arise.
Right, and the crisis converter section focuses on how to turn those challenging situations into opportunities for growth and advancement.
Because sometimes those disruptions can actually open up new possibilities, right? It's about being able to adapt and showcase your resilience.
Exactly. They introduce the opportunity lens, where you train yourself to see organizational changes not as threats, but as chances to step up and contribute to solutions. They tell a story about Marcus, an operations manager who, during a company restructuring, volunteered to lead an initiative to streamline processes and reduce costs.
So instead of panicking or complaining, he saw it as a chance to demonstrate his leadership potential and make a real impact.
Exactly. It's about being proactive and solution-oriented. And they also talk about the stability strategy, where you focus on offering solutions that maintain stability and continuity during those periods of transition.
So for example, if the company is going through a merger, you might focus on identifying ways to ensure a smooth transition for clients and minimize disruption to operations.
Right. It's about being a calming force in the midst of chaos, reassuring stakeholders, and offering practical solutions.
It sounds like a lot of these strategies are about reframing your mindset. Instead of seeing change as something to fear, you see it as an opportunity to learn, grow, and showcase your abilities.
Absolutely. And that positive mindset is contagious. When you approach challenging situations with confidence and a solution-oriented attitude, it inspires others to do the same.
This is all so empowering. It's about taking control of your career narrative, even when things feel unpredictable.
Exactly. And the episode offers even more strategies for navigating those turbulent times. They talk about crisis credibility, where you leverage your past experience in handling difficult situations to build trust and confidence in your abilities. They also introduce change champion communication, where you actively embrace change and position yourself as a leader in guiding the company through periods of transition.
It's about being that voice of reason and optimism, helping people to see the possibilities, even in the midst of uncertainty.
Right, and finally they talk about the future focus framework, where you shift the conversation from anxiety about change to excitement about future possibilities. It's about painting a compelling vision of what the company can become and inspiring people to embrace change as a pathway to growth.
I love that it's about turning fear into fuel, using those challenges as a springboard to propel yourself and the company forward.
Exactly, and it's important to remember that even in the midst of crisis, you can still leverage the power of the ROI narrative.
Right, it's about connecting your contributions to tangible business outcomes, even when resources are tight or priorities are shifting.
They give an example of a marketing director who, during a period of budget cuts, instead of just accepting the cuts, she identified ways to increase digital marketing impact, while actually reducing overall spend.
That's amazing. So she turned a potential setback into an opportunity to demonstrate her creativity and her strategic thinking.
Exactly. It's about showing that you are not just a cost center, but a value creator, even in challenging times.
Wow, this episode is packed with so much wisdom. I feel like we could talk about it for hours.
Yeah.
But we are getting close to the end of our deep dive, and there's one final section I want to make sure we touch on. Innovation.
You're right. The innovation indicator section focuses on how to position yourself at the forefront of change, embracing emerging technologies and innovative approaches.
Because in today's rapidly evolving world, adaptability and a willingness to embrace new ideas are essential, right?
Absolutely. The episode starts by talking about future fluency.
Okay, I like that term. What does it mean to be fluent in the future?
It means being able to speak confidently and knowledgeably about emerging technologies and their potential impact on the business. They give an example of Sarah, a data analyst who, instead of just saying she wanted to work with AI, talked about how predictive analytics could transform decision-making processes. She even highlighted her success in implementing machine learning models in her previous role.
So she's not just talking about buzzwords. She's demonstrating a deep understanding of how those technologies can be applied to solve real business problems.
Exactly, and they also talk about the importance of being a practical visionary.
I like that combination of words. So it's not just about having big ideas. It's about being able to ground those ideas in practical applications.
Right, they give an example of a project manager who identified specific use cases for blockchain technology within the company's supply chain operations. He wasn't just talking about the theoretical potential of blockchain, he was showing how it could actually be implemented to solve existing problems.
That's so smart. It's about bridging the gap between those cutting-edge ideas and real-world applications.
Exactly, and they also talk about innovation translation, which is about being able to explain complex technological concepts in a way that is both accessible and engaging.
Because sometimes those technical terms can be really intimidating.
Yeah.
Right? Especially for people who don't have a background in that field.
Right, and the episode gives an example of an IT specialist who used a simple analogy to explain how her solutions could optimize the company's digital infrastructure. She compared it to a smart traffic system that reduces congestion.
That's a great way to make a complex concept relatable. It takes the technical jargon out of the equation and makes it understandable for everyone.
Exactly. And then they talk about future-present packaging, where you position yourself as a leader in shaping the future while still delivering value in the present.
So it's about balancing that long-term vision with a focus on tangible, immediate results.
Right. They give an example of a marketing strategist who talked about how his current focus on building foundational digital experiences was actually paving the way for future success in areas like metaverse marketing.
So he's showing how his current work is not just about meeting today's needs, but also about building a foundation for future growth.
Exactly. And finally, they talk about the importance of the credibility cascade.
Remind me what that one's all about.
It's about building trust in your ability to execute innovative ideas by highlighting your past successes. You are basically showcasing your track record as an innovator.
So you are not just talking about your ideas, you are backing them up with evidence of your ability to make those ideas a reality.
Precisely, and you are also making sure those ideas are grounded in real business needs. They call this the reality anchor. It's about connecting your innovative goals to concrete challenges and opportunities within the company, ensuring that your ideas are relevant and aligned with the company's strategic priorities.
This is all so brilliant. It's like a masterclass in how to be a successful innovator within an organization.
It is, and it really highlights how important it is to be adaptable, future-focused, and able to communicate your ideas effectively.
I feel like this episode has given me so much to think about, and we are just scratching the surface of all the wisdom it contains.
Right, it's packed with valuable insights and practical techniques.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Business English Podcast, episode 42, How to Answer Career Goal Questions. This episode has given us so much to think about when it comes to crafting our own career narratives.
It has. We have explored the power of language, the importance of feedback, the art of storytelling, the nuances of negotiation, and the need to embrace innovation and change.
And through it all, we have learned that it's not just about what you say, but how you say it. It's about being strategic, authentic, and always focused on creating value.
It's about finding your voice, telling your story, and navigating your career journey with confidence and clarity.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it valuable and insightful.
If you'd like to explore these concepts further, we encourage you to listen to the full episode of Business English Podcast.
And be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more in-depth analyses of your favorite podcasts and other resources.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to achieve your full potential.